Hey, what's going on, guys, and welcome back to another video. So today we're back with another tier list. It's been a while since I've made one of these, and I figured why not. In fact, we have King of the Desert coming up soon, which is, if you guys don't know, is a 1v1 Arabia tournament with 50,000 prize pool. It's hosted by MemTV. I'll probably leave a link to the Aoe2 post down below. Explains everything about the tournament and the details there. But anyway. It's a 1v1 Arabia tournament, and with that, let's do a 1v1 Arabia tier list. This is probably the bread and butter of AoE Arabia, and so this tier list is going to be pretty good for you guys over at the rank ladder, and if you guys want to play some Arabia on unranked as well. It's good to know these things for 1v1 Arabia. As usual, this is just my opinion, obviously. It's not fact or anything like that, and I'm going to be kind of taking into consideration 1v1 Arabia at a pro level. So some civs like Goths might be like S+ tier for, like, you low legends out there, but for pro level, if you show your face with Goths in a tournament, you're probably gonna lose. So just keep that in mind, that this is just more geared towards pro level, but not saying you can't learn from it at lower levels as well. And then the next thing is the KOTD Arabia will be a little bit more open, so I'm going to keep that in mind as well. Civs that tend to work really well in closed maps. Let's give a random example here, something like, I don't know, Britons. My mic is actually trolling me so hard here. Okay, that should be better. Sorry about that. Something like Britons, or maybe that's a bad example. Maybe something like, I don't know, Mayans, who really love closed maps, might not be rated as highly on this list because it's going to consider that it's going to be an open Arabia. Anyways, with all that out of the way, let's hop into it. I'm going to do it differently here. So I have greats for the top, good, then average, below average, and bad. Very simple. This is, you might mistake it for like some grade 2 vocabulary quiz, but this is what I'm going to be using for the tier lists, and they're self-explanatory. And I'm going to do it one at a time this time. So I'm going to start with Aztecs. So Aztecs, and I'm also winging this. I have no preparation. No, not in the bad. Aztecs are going to be in the great tier. Has to be, man. So I'm gonna do it one by one as such, alphabetical order, and I'll place them in the tier list as I see fit. So Aztecs. I mean, I pretty much put S tier for Aztecs in like every tier list I make, but really it's just great economy, great units. The reason why Aztecs are so good on Arabia is because they have also the ability to collect the relics and have a really solid late game with extra relic gold. So I mean, that's not the reason, but basically they're good at all stages of the game, and they even have the relic bonus to help them with the super late game with great trash units like skirmishers and pikemen with Garland Wars, skirmishers with Tlatl. Just super solid overall, and obviously they're great economy for the early game is just insane. Next up, we have the Berber civilization. Berbers is interesting. Definitely not great, definitely not bad. So we're looking at the 3 tiers in the center. Now, Berbers have really good knights playing Castle Age, and beforehand, I used to think that Berbers are terrible, but recently they had a balance change that made melee units pretty solid again. Like, now melee units are back to normal. Shout out to the balance team. Shout out to the devs for that one. Pathing is super smooth, so they're gonna put them on average. Maybe even good though. Average or good. I feel like I'm gonna put them on average for now. We'll talk about it after. But average for Berbers. Basically, they're not like an insane economy civ. However, they have a decent economy bonus with their villages moving faster, which helps the farms. And then they have really good knights camel play in Castage, getting the cheaper knights. And then they have a really good late game with cheaper hussars. You guys know how much I like that unit. And obviously the camel archers, which are pretty good. So definitely Berbers are on the average tier, maybe even good, but I think they're just lacking some eco bonus, some really solid eco bonus, and some variety as well that is preventing me from putting them to good, because they don't really have Arbalest, and they have sometimes an awkward transition if they can't play with their cav and Castle Age. Alright, Britons. Britons are solid. I think Britons might actually be, if it was closed Arabia, the kind of Arabia we're seeing in the ranked ladder, Britons are definitely great because they're insane for Drush FC and stuff like that. But with open Arabia, they might actually fall down to good, actually, because of the fact that they could die to a lot of knight skirm play. They are, like, the more open the map is, the worse Britons are. That's the idea, right? So I actually think they might be on good for KOTD. It's such a hard one though, because they're also decent on open Arabias. They're not terrible on them, but they're missing bloodlines and they're missing thumb ring. So if it's like an open area of archers and knights and stuff like that, like without thumb ring, archers aren't that great against knights. So it's tough. It's a tough choice. But they also have a really good economy and really good late game and really good early game, and just the best crossbows in Castle Age in 1v1. So this is actually, maybe I should have prepared. This is a tough decision. I'm gonna put them in. I'm gonna put them in great tier. Yeah, I think that in the hands of a skilled player, Britons are really, really strong and hard to punish as well. So I'm gonna put them in great tier. And also you'll always be able to close up your map in a decent way as well. I say always here with quotations. Most of the time, you should be able to close up your map a little bit. If you're not fully walled, you at least have some walls up to defend tournaments. So this shouldn't be that open to raids. Next up, we have the Bulgarians. Bulgarians are a weird one though. I'm thinking below average or bad actually for this one. So basically, they have really awkward options. They're missing crossbow, so that's definitely a red flag for 1v1. And they don't really have a great eco bonus. Saving stone on town centers is pretty bad for 1v1 Arabia. So, and then like the one thing they do have going for them is that they have good units. So they have Krepos, which is a nice building to give you flexibility in Castle Age, either aggressively or defensively. And then the Chronic is obviously beastly. Stirrups, Tatars are really beastly too. And then obviously getting really good siege is nice. I think I'm gonna put them at below average because you still have some things going for the Civ, and you still have Bracer with them as well. So your late game is really solid. I think the worst part about Bulgarians is that early Castle Age transition. Besides Knights, they don't really have any good options, and you probably have to make the game very messy to get away with their Castle Age. So below average, but they have some interesting options as well, especially in the late game. So I'll keep them away from the bad tier for now at least. Burmese are an interesting one. Burmese might have to be below average, although I personally rate them pretty highly. Oof, this is a tough one because I think Burmese are actually pretty good. They counter cavalry civs because they have a Rambai and cheaper monk tech, so they have like the perfect kit to counter cavalry civilizations. Or at least if you're not countering them, you're forcing them to go into skirms, which is not as efficient as if they want to play cavalry, which is what they're good at. So Burmese is inherently good like that. That also has really good matchups, in my opinion, versus civs like Aztecs. Or like Celts, like infantry civilizations. Burmese tends to do really well into, and it has a lot of options. I'm going to put them at the average tier. It's also, all these options are combined with a good eco bonus too, so Burmese have to be average, right? They're decent, like they have decent all-around options. The weakest link for Burmese is probably the fact that they don't have armor on their skirmishers, so you might die to like early Arbalest, but in that case you still have onagers as an option, which is not the best option, but it's still an option, so not that bad. With the eco bonus as well to help you get up faster than your opponent at times, or at least keep up. So I'm going to put Burmese as average. It's not a civ that people are going to rush to pick in the tournaments, but it's a civ that could be decent in Arabia and has good matchups. Next up is Byzantine. I think I'm going to put Byzantine in the good section. I didn't put too much thought into this. Basically, you have really good skirmishers and really good, pikemen, camels, really cheap trash all around, which helps counter a lot of the civilizations. Especially skirmishers, again, cheap skirmishers is just really helpful to counter any archer civ. But it also has a lot of other things going for it. It has the cheaper cataphracts now, which gives it a good matchup versus Mezzo. And cheaper cataphracts, I mean, they recently made the upgrades for cataphracts cheaper. Both Logistica Unique Tech and Elite Cataphract were dropped. Elite Cataphract was dropped by 400 food, and Logistica was dropped by 200 food. So you're saving 600 food total by teching into cataphracts in late game. And it just inherently gives you a good matchup against Mezzo. And Mezzo is dominant on Arabia, at least at the top level. So having Byzantines as an option up your sleeve is going to be a really good thing for you in the draft. And it's definitely a civ that's very versatile. And it has the fast imp bonus as well. Like basically Imperial is just cheaper. So it does give you options to go for like 2TC fast imp. I just think Byzantine is super flexible. It's just a solid civ, honestly. Maybe even a bit underrated by some players. Celts is another one that's like I'm hovering between good and average. It's another one that has good matchups with Mezzo because it does have really nice onagers with good infantry, and like champion or void raider onagers does really well against Mezzo civs most of the time. But Celts tend to have a lot of weak matchups though. They die to early Arbalest as well. If you're still in Castle Age as Celts and the other guy's in Imperial to the Arbalest, you're gonna die. It has a bad matchup versus Britons. And it doesn't have the easiest to play late game. But then again, it has such a strong economy bonus, and it has some powerful options, like their siege push early game is pretty strong. I think it really depends on the pilot. I'm going to put it as good. Personally, I don't really like this civ. I don't think it's that strong. I think it has a lot of weaknesses. But I know a lot of players do like it. And it is picked quite frequently, and from my experience at least. I'm going to put it as good, but I think you can make an average. You can make an argument that it should be an average because it is missing a lot of important things. And you know what? You know what? Since the map is going to be more open, I think I'm going to drop it to average. I'm sorry, Huang. If you're out there, my man, please have mercy next time you see me in the ranked ladder. Don't Huang rush me too hard. But listen, I think with the map being more open, it doesn't suit Celts because Celts need to like wall up and then take a forward position with some sort of siege push. That's like the best way to play them. So the more open the map is, the harder it is to achieve that. And they're lacking bloodlines, so the cavalry play isn't that great as well. So I think it's a fair average based on that. Next time we have Chinese. I think Chinese is between good and great. I'm not sure which one I want to put them on. I think I have to put them on great just because they have so many flexible options. But the reason why I'm thinking good is because if Chinese get lamed, they have a really hard time getting out of their starts. So if you get lamed as Chinese, it's one of the worst things that can happen to you. And the problem is this tournament has no rules against laming. And the maps being super open leads to like really snowballing games if you do get lamed as Chinese. So I think like it's an S tier civ. It's a great civ, other than the fact that it's vulnerable to early game lames, and that's something that a lot of players would go for. So I'm going to put it in the great category with the clause that you could have a really rough start if you're up against civs like Meso or Mongols who lame, and by lame I mean steal your boar or sheep in the early game. And again, in tournaments, players will look to do this. They want to take any advantage. There's tons of money on the line, tons of I guess I'm gonna say like fame, glory, I guess is the better word, on the line as well, because it is a pretty big tournament. So you have to be careful with Chinese. So I'm gonna put it as great, but with that little clause. Watch out in the early game. Cumans. Cumans are so weird. Like no, I feel like the civ is yet to be fully discovered. Let me explain a little bit why I think that. Basically, Cumans have really powerful options. Like going 2TC boom is a really powerful option, yet very risky, because if your opponent goes for like fast castle and then goes for like some early siege push on you and you're stuck doing a 2TC, you can insta die. On the other hand, if your opponent goes fast castle thinking you're gonna 2TC boom and then you just simply go for like archers plus rams and fuel age, you can instantly kill them and break their fast castle. Also, we saw Tato. I don't know if you guys watched the game on my channel. Tato beat me with Cumans. He went 2TC boom and then into like a tower rush, and it was like pretty hard to stop. I do think I made some mistakes in that game, like some decision making mistakes, but it was also just a really solid strategy. So I don't know where to place this. I'm gonna put it on average. I think depending on the player, it could be below average and it could be good, but overall having it at average feels pretty solid. Has a good late game, has a lot of interesting options in the early game, but it could be very very vulnerable as well at times. So let's keep it as average. Next up we have Ethiopians, which normally I would put them as good right away, but since we're actually dealing with an open Arabia, I think the more open the map is, the harder it is for Ethiopians to actually keep up. So I might actually drop down to an average because of that. They're missing bloodlines. They're missing a lot of good cavalry tech as well. They don't have +4 in the late game on their cavalry, and so they do have camels though, so that helps them a little bit in the open game against some sort of cavalry civs. I mean, I'm tempted to put them in the good place, in the good place, and a nice show reference there. I'm tempted to put them in the good category because they are really powerful. They have like the best arbalest in the game. They have really nice siege for late game. They have a decent economy bonus throughout the ages. I don't know. It just feels like something's missing. They are a good civ though. I'm gonna put them as good. I think they are a good civ. Yeah, and you know what? Even if the map is open, Ethiopians can easily open men at arms into like archers, wall up some of the map, transition to a stable to counter skirmishers if need be, and then play some sort of like Campbell crossbow or knight crossbow in Castle Age. And not really a huge problem with that. Late game, obviously, you're lacking some cavalry techs. Yeah, you probably don't want to be playing Hussar with Ethiopians late game, although you do get Hussar, so you could actually play with it. So it seems like a decent civ with some options, and it has like halberdier. I don't know. Ethiopian is solid, honestly. It's a good civ. I feel like I'm convincing myself more than anything here. Franks, with the melee pathing fixed, easy good civ for me, easy. It might even be great civ actually, depending on who's piloting it. Yeah, I think this could actually be a great civ. I'm not going to put it there because it is still a one-dimensional cav civ, and one-dimensional cav civs are very risky. Although on an open map, Franks really shine. They're very, very strong. Great economy bonus, really good early game scout rush, really good late game composition with Paladin and throwing Axeman. I say really good. It's not a really good one, but it's really good because you can get into Paladin and Axeman pretty easily compared to some other civs. It's all in because you're doing double gold unit, but it's actually a really powerful all in. And sometimes you get like, basically you take the map control with the Paladin, then you take all the golds, and then you transition to throwing Axeman. And there's no counter to that at that point. And you combine that with the cheaper castles to take the map control. It's just so dirty. Oh, Franks are so good. I want to take a bold statement here. Oh, Hera, you can't do it, man. I just did it. Yeah, okay. Franks are great. I think I'm gonna put Franks in the great tier because honestly, if the map is gonna be as open as I imagine it being, an early game scout rush is gonna be good. They fixed the pathing, so night play is actually really good now. So I think Franks are in the great tier. I think they have some weaknesses. They're not as well rounded as some of the other civs. However, sort of like Britons have some weaknesses. Franks also have some weaknesses, but their game is very strong. And if you let them play their game, they are going to destroy you. So I think it's pretty solid there. Goths are another civ that should probably just go straight to below average. It's not bad because it still has some decent matchups versus archer civs. It also has free loom now, so basically it's a free villager after Dark Age. And it lets you get a nice 60 militia drush out opening with Goths. But it's a civ that is very one-dimensional, and its one trick is not that strong. Like, all-in infantry is very easy to stop in high level these days. Like, Goths has some decent matchups, like I said, but it's a slow civ, and it's very predictable. And in pro level, that makes it, like, really easy to stop. I know if it, like I said before, if this is, like, lower level, it might even be average, good. If it's loyal legends, the civ is, like, above, it's, like, out of the browser, okay? But obviously for King of the Desert purposes, I think it's a below average. I don't think we're going to see too much of this civ, obviously. Huns. Easy good tier. Now that cavalry pathing has been fixed, you don't have to go cavalry archers in the early game, so you can open like knights and stuff in early game and then transition to cavalry archer late game. Cavalry archer, obviously, if you guys don't know, have this problem where they have a really big fire delay. It hasn't been fixed yet. I don't know if it's gonna be fixed. So in the meantime, even if you have cheaper cavalry archers, I'm not saying never do them, but I'm also saying never do them. Like, you never should open cavalry archers these days. It's the unit is so hard to micro. It's only good against cavalry units, basically. Against like knights and stuff. But usually with Huns, I would recommend opening crossbow into like some sort of cavalry, like knights or something, and then find your way, or even like open crossbow and then like halfway through castle start massing CA. Cavalry archers are still good if you don't have to hit and run with them. If you have to hit and run with them in castle age, like early raids, that's bad. But if you want to just mass them up and patrol in late game fights, they're still good at that. Nothing changed there. Hopefully I explained that properly. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments below, of course. But Huns are still a really good set. They have obviously really good economy bonuses, faster stables in the early game, lets you get a really solid scout rush in. And then they have a really good late game with the option to go Tarkans, skirmishers, or cavalry hussar. And then you always have siege ram available. So Huns are super solid, good civ for sure. Incas, I'm going to put them as the average because they don't have a great eco bonus, but they have really good matchups for Mezzo. They have a lot of interesting options themselves, and they usually have counters to like every civ, like unit-wise. So I think if played correctly, Incas could be a good civ, but in the hands of like, in the hands of like most pros, I would say, across like 100 games, I should say, I think across 100 games, Incas are going to be more or less an average civ. Like, I do think they can potentially do well against some of the top civs here, but usually Huns would probably beat Incas. I think that's a fair statement to make. Usually Huns would beat Incas. Usually Ethiopians would beat Incas. Usually Byzantine have a really good matchup with Incas. Same thing with the top civs. You guys get the point. So an average civ seems fine for Incas. Indians, ooh, I think they have to be below average, right? Yeah, I'm gonna put Indians as below average. They have a bad matchup versus Mezzo. They have no knights, so they're actually very hindered in certain games where you need knights, namely against like some sort of like siege push. Against crossbow, you're forced to go skirmishers with Indians, which is not bad, but you might just lose to the other player going knights and crossbows. Hard to counter that. Even with camel skirm, you have some problems. So Indians have to be below average. Missing the knights is such a big thing for one from Arabia, and they don't like, they have a decent economy. They have a good economy, I should say, but nothing that special going for them. So I think it's an all-around decent civ. You can make an argument to go average actually, but I think they died to like most archer civs, and they died to like Halb Ram as well in early game, in early imps. So they have a lot of weaknesses, I would say. Italians, below average. I mean, the civ like has no bonuses basically. Like, it has only the bonus to advance up to age cheaper, and it has like a pretty wide open tech tree, I guess. They have Hussar, they have Arbalest, they have siege. No, they have Capram, bomber cannons. I guess they get cheaper gunpowder. I think they get cheaper gunpowder, right? I think that's Italians, yeah. Cheaper gunpowder, which is decent. They also have the condottiero, which is like pretty gimmicky in One Arabia. So I guess they're like an overall like okay civ, but since they have no bonuses going for them and nothing special, I have to put them in below average. The one reason I liked Italians though is because sure they don't get a lot of bonuses, but they do have a wide open tech tree. So if you do play them correctly, they have a lot of options. You know what I mean? So like, I feel like it's not a hard civ to play. It's an easy civ to play, but it's just not a powerful one. Next up, Japanese, easy average for me. I mean, actually, you could consider it to be a good civ, actually. But I think I'm going to leave it as average because its late game isn't great. Well, its late game is good, but it's lacking some cavalry attacks in late game. So you don't get, like, the hussar rates that are going to be very important. I know I'm obsessed with hussars, and, like, I'm super biased when I say that. But I think hussar is the best 1v1 unit. I should make a video about that, by the way. And I think, especially in open maps, not having hussars is pretty... like, not having hussars or +4 armor on the cav is pretty sketchy. So... for that reason, I'm going to leave Japanese as average, but they have really good early game. They have meta arm rush that's really strong. They have really good economy because you get cheaper economic buildings. So you save 50 wood like times like, what is it, 5? You're doing like 2 lumber camps, a mining camp, and a mill. So you save like 200 wood in the early game, which is pretty solid. Like before you even get to feudal age, that's really solid. And then they have like arbalest, really good trash units, halberdier skirms. A decent siege, but also good towers to take control with the Osama. So I think some sort of like skirm halb plus tower play can be really good for Japanese in late game, and they have a really good economy for early game. So, and they get bloodline, so you can still play with some cavalry. So a pretty average civ for me. Khmer is going to be at the good or S or good or great tier. Good or great? I think it actually might be the great tier. Yeah. Khmer economy is insane, boys. Like Khmer economy is insane. They have really good early game because you don't need your barracks to make like an archer rush or a scout rush happen. You have really flexible options in the castle age. You have redemption monks available to you. You have +1 range scorpions, so immediately you can counter siege with redemption monks. +1 range scorpions to counter any archers. Really good cavalry to match other good cavalry civs. And what else do you need? They have a really good economy bonus with the farms as well. So yeah, this definitely is a great civ. And you also get Arbalest. No thumb rank, sure, but you also get Arbalest with Bracer. I think the Arbalest is fully upgraded, actually. They might be missing the last armor, but I'm not sure. But anyway, you get Bracer Arbalest, which is like really strong for early imps. So they even have good transitions. It's definitely a great civ for me. Koreans, I'm going to put on average. Free tower tax is pretty good. They also get cheaper wood bonuses, which is pretty good. The War Wagon is a pretty good unit. Yeah, I'm saying a lot of average things right now. Like, they have a lot of average bonuses that add up, is what I want to say. Like, the tower bonus is really strong. However, I don't know if it's going to be, played every game. Like, if you pick Koreans, it's predictable, right? So it's not that, feared. And the thing is, the tower bonus kicks in only in Castle Age as well. So it's not anything that helps you much in Feudal Age. However, you could set up the towers in Feudal Age and then get the bonus in Castle Age. That's, like, the best way to play it, I guess you can say. Yeah, I think Koreans are an average civ, honestly. Not something we're going to see too often, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see it once or twice by some players who would like to do, like, the tower aggression. Next up is going to be Lithuanians. I actually think Lithuanians are in the good tier. They get a really good early eco bonus with the 150 free food. Lets you get some really nice rushes like 18 pop scouts, 20 pop men arms stuff. Basically, you can do the same strategies as other civs, but 2 pop faster. You can also do something like 20 pop spear skirms. I actually recently had a video where Leary did that versus me, and spoiler, he won the game. So yeah, Lithuanian is pretty solid. For that, for a lot of those reasons. And then their late game is insane because their lightest is completely broken. Devs, actually, if you're out there, Bill Gates, my boy, lightest are kind of overpowered right now because they have really strong attack, really cheap cost. 50 gold for a heavy cavalry unit is insane. And then they also scale their attack more with relics. So I'm pretty sure there's a stat out there, like if you have, and they ignore armor, I forgot to mention that. If you have 2 relics with Lithuanian lightest, you have 20 damage. You 3-shot a halberdier. And halberdier is supposed to be the counter, by the way. So it's like you 3-shot the counter, and that just makes lightest like so unstoppable in late game. Granted, they only have 2 pierce armor compared to the paladin's 3 base. However, they don't do that bad against archers, and you can easily do the Lithuanian skirmishers mixed in with them to take care of any archer civ. So late game for Lithuanians is super solid. And it's impossible to deny all the relics against Lithuanians every time. So they're always going to get like 1 or 2 at least, maybe even more. And if played properly, I think Lithuanians can even be a great civ. But I'm going to put them in good civ because they don't have quite the eco bonus as the great civs and quite the flexibility, but they have decent flexibility, good power, and really, really nice late game as well. Moving on here, we have the Magyars. Probably an average civ. I don't think Magyars are that bad. Like in this Arabia, the closed one, in the ranked Arabia, I think Magyars are pretty bad because they don't have time to do damage with their early game scouts or early game men at arms because everyone's full walled. But in this open Arabia that we're going to see with King of the Desert, I think there's going to be a lot of chance for Magyars to shine with their scout rush. They also have a really good late game. So when you combine some early damage with a good late game, obviously you might have some kind of sketchy stuff in the middle, but if you can get to late game, you are in a good position. And the thing is with Magyars, their mid game isn't terrible. They have really good knights in mid game, getting the free forging and iron casting. Obviously the cheap light cav or cheap scouts are really nice. And you can easily go crossbow or skirmisher. I don't recommend you go cav archer because Magyars have no bonus on cav archers and castlage. And like the rule goes, never cav archers in early game. That's something I talk about too often, and at the same time not often enough. So yeah, I don't think cav archers are that great in castlage, but in late game, heavy cav archer is good. Obviously when you patrol fights, they're good. And then Magyar Hussar is just a really good unit in general. So keep an eye out for Magyars in open maps. We might see some of this. It's definitely an average civ because it has some weaknesses in the mid game that some of the good civs can exploit. Malay is probably average. On a more closed Arabia, you could say they're good because they have a really good chance to get some extra or a safe early game, which lets you get a good vill lead. But since the Arabia will be pretty open, Malay is pretty sketchy. You're missing bloodlines. You have a really risky early game because you get extra villagers because you advance faster, but you also have less resources to work with. And so if your opponent goes for a really aggressive strategy, you might not have the resources to defend. And then if you lose some villagers, well, then you lost your pretty much only bonus for the civ. So Malay is definitely on average. Their elephants are really good versus some matchups, like versus Meso, for example. So that's why I think that the civ might see some play in King of the Desert to counter some Meso civs. And just in general, it's a decent archer civ with like Arbalest and the fast in potential. But I think if depending on how open the map is, the civ can be like the more open it is, the worse it is. So it's a very risky civ as well. I'll put it in average for now. Malians should just be in the good tier. This civ is hard to play, but if you play it properly, if it's a good pilot controlling it, I would say a good player on the civ, it could be very deadly. Has a really good eco bonus. It has really good options throughout the game. Starting with the men at arm rush or a scout rush, men at arms get +1 pierce armor in feudal age. And then late game, they can easily go for some sort of like champions with extra pierce armor, some Farimba Cav. Also, Gebero, the unique unit, is pretty solid in some matchups. And you get Arbalest, but no Bracer. But you get fully upgraded crossbows and knights in castlage with faster working university. So your spike in castlage is potentially really strong. So keep an eye on Malians. I think we'll definitely see a lot of Malians being picked, in my opinion. Mayans. Probably great, but probably great. However, like the more open the map is, the worse Mayans is. Because you don't even have a stable. Like Britons are better than Mayans because, or like more flexible because you have the stable. You can defend yourself against skirmishers a lot easier. Mayans don't really have that luxury. The feudal ages are very, very open to being exploited by some other civs. And like Aztecs don't have the problem because they have faster producing units, so they can actually go for some eagle switch in feudal age because the eagles produce faster, and also their archery ranges produce faster, so they can easily make a skirmisher switch themselves. And they have a better eco bonus, so they can get the castle faster. Mayans, or better farms, I should say. But Mayans have a really good eco bonus. But the best part about Mayans is just their really smooth castle and imperial play, castle and early imp play, and they have a lot of problems in feudal age. I'm gonna put them in great, but with a small clause that if you have an open map, you could see Mayans dying in feudal age. Let's put them in the good category. It pains me so much to do this, but like I think we'll see Mayans picked almost every round in the draft. But it does have some weaknesses. I can't be biased here. I love Mayans. I can't be biased though. It does have more weaknesses than some of the other civs up here. Like these civs protect themselves a lot better. Maybe Chinese is a bit weak, but in certain cases if they get lamed. But like, I just foresee Mayans dying a lot in feudal age. Yeah, I'm gonna leave them in the good category. They're really strong. They have a lot of good strengths, but then they also have some small weaknesses that could. And they're also very gold dependent. Their late game without gold isn't very good. So that I think that's fine to put them as good. Honestly, they have really good matchups against some of the great civs. But then they also have a lot of weaknesses. I'm still debating, actually. I'm still debating. Yeah, I'm going to leave them in good tier. I think they're probably the best Civ in the good tier, but I don't think they're quite at the great tier. All right. If you guys want to put them in great, feel free. This is just, like, this Civ is really good, but it's missing something. Or at least it's not missing something, but it's exposed some stuff. Mongols is an easy good Civ for me. Okay, so Mongols is really strong in the early game with their faster hunt. Really good blaming potential. If you steal a boar with Mongols, you get a third boar that's like faster to hunt, which gives you an insane advantage when your opponent only has one boar. So you can potentially get a really nice early game advantage with Mongols. Obviously, you have the higher line of sight to allow you to do this a lot easier than some of the other Civs. So Mongols definitely come to mind as probably one of the best early game Civs. And then similar to Magyars, they kind of stagnate in the mid game. They don't have anything going for them, but they do have camels. They do have some crossbow play that can keep them alive easily. Like, it's not that big a deal. And then in Imperial Age, you get Mangadai, and game is over. Okay, obviously not every time, but Mangadai are like one of the best units in the game, if not the best unit in the game at the moment. And having access to them is obviously really good. And also Mongols have really good siege as well, so you can easily defend against early pushes using siege that moves faster, and then transition to like Hussar Mangadai. Hussar have more HP. It's such a good late game Civ. So Mongols have some weaknesses in the mid game, so they're not the best Civ out there, but they are really good, and especially in the right hands, they can be very strong. Next, we have Persians, easy average for me. Good economy, a pretty good units overall. However, you have some weaknesses with Persians, in the sense that you don't have bracer, you don't have like great options besides cavalry. Like, what do you do with Persians if you can't go cavalry? So you're pretty much one-dimensional with a good economy, and your early game is not that special. Like, it's pretty good. They're like decent all across the game, basically, I would say. So it's an average Civ. I don't think we'll see too much of it. Yeah, I think it's just decent across all stages of the game. You could make an argument for it to be a good Civ, actually. Like, you could make an argument up here, but I do feel like it struggles versus a lot of these Civs. So I think it's just average. We might see it, we might not in the draft. We'll see. Portuguese is probably... Ooh, is this a bad Civ? Is this the first bad Civ? Portuguese has like literally nothing going for them. Organ guns are kind of trash. I think this might be the first bad Civ, honestly. It has cheaper gold units though, and that recently got buffed. I'm gonna put them on below average. It's probably one of the weakest Civs out there. I might even remove the bad tier altogether, actually. Yeah, I might even remove the bad tier altogether. Oh, is this the first time in Hera tier list that I remove a tier list? I'm actually gonna remove a tier list. Delete row. Whoa! I just deleted a tier list. Okay. Well, I don't think we need the bad tier list, honestly, because nothing is gonna go inside it. So I think Portuguese falls in below average, and that's more than fine. They have nothing really going for them. They have the cheap gold units, so I guess it's like you're saving some gold here and there, but the late game is not that spectacular. And playing with gunpowder with unique tech arquebus is like super weird in Arabia, and Fatoria is just a joke in Arabia. So I don't know. I'll leave it as below average. It has a pretty decent tech tree, but it's missing hussars, so it's basically weaker than Italians. You know what? Hold on. Just kidding. The row is coming back. Portuguese is a bad Civ. It's literally Italians, but worse. It's a bad Civ. Let's roll that shit back. It's coming back. It's literally just Italians, but worse. And it has nothing really going for it. Organ guns are really bad right now. I don't know what happened to them, but I think they're just really easy to exploit. So I don't see any redeeming factor for Portuguese. Sorry, man. Saracens, good Civ. Why? Market abuse with Saracens. We've seen tons of the strategy before. Extremely hard to stop. Extremely powerful, extremely snowbally, and the Civ just has a great late game in general. Fully upgraded hussars, really good siege with siege ram, siege onager with siege engineers, really good monk tech if you need that. Mamelukes, kind of suck, but I guess it could be good in some cases, but probably not. And then fully upgraded arbalest and heavy cav archers that are also fully upgraded, I believe, as well. So a lot of good options for Saracens in the late game, and the early game market abuse can be very strong as well. So definitely a good. And also the archers breaking through the walls faster is pretty solid. So yeah, definitely a good civ here and for all purposes. Slavs. Ooh, I think Slavs can be a good civ. Yeah, cheap siege, good farms, pretty good late game with Hussar spam. Halb siege is a good option for it as well. It's a bit like Celts actually, because it's a bit awkward in some cases, but Slavs at least have bloodlines, so they can play the open game with the knight play a lot better than Celts can. So that's the reason Slavs would be at good tier. Next up, we're gonna have Spanish. It's gonna go straight to average. I can see some Chinese players playing this. Vivi, Lix. I think those three players love Spanish, but it's just not that strong nowadays. Skirms do really good against conks. In Arabia, they don't have crossbow, so they're lacking some flexibility in some like fast castle scenarios. But depending on how open the map is, tower rush into wall into conk can be really strong. So I guess if the map is pretty open with Spanish, it's good because you get to go like, you know, all in tower rush into like conquistador, which is still a good castle age unit. So I'll leave it as average. It could see some play, and it could see some results. But it's if you play properly against Spanish with like any of these civs or most of these civs, usually you'll be fine. Next up is the Tatars. Tatars is an easy average civ for me as well. They have really good power spikes, especially in early castle with the free thumb ring. And they have a really good bonus with the sheep as well in the early game. Their late game is also pretty decent. Keshiks are not bad either. I think Tatars are one of the better average civs actually. Or at least they're like average amongst the average civs. Yeah, they're pretty well rounded, but nothing too spectacular that the civ offers that's like, okay, this civ is amazing or great or good. So I think it's just like an average civ across the board. I think the best thing about the Tatars is the free thumb ring power spike. That you could actually make really good use of that in a lot of cases. They also have a really good late game with the extra pierce armor and Hussars. So I think the Tatars might see some play here and there, but I also think people don't really like it as a civ. I'm not sure why actually. It's like it's a decent civ, but I don't know. It's just not that popular for some reason. Teutons. Teutons are not bad these days, actually. They got a lot of buffs. They got a lot of buffs recently. I think I'm debating between below average and average. Let's go with average, actually. Like, they actually got enough buffs to the point where I actually think they're average. I would have put them at bad before, but they got extra armor on the cav, which could be really good in knight matchups, actually. Extra armor in infantry, which is really good against knight matchups. Like, think about Teuton versus Franks, for example. Like, Teutons can easily hold their own there. I think Franks are way better, obviously, but I think Teutons can hold their own. Same thing, Teutons versus Slavs. Teutons can hold their own. They have a good economy bonus at home as well. Really good siege with Teutons. Pretty good castles in late game to take control of the maps. Pretty much invisible to bomber cannon. So I think Teutons are not bad. I think I'm going to put them in the average tier. They could see some play, or at least they could be like a gimmick civ that's actually decent. Next up, we have the Turks, which is going to be easily below average for me. Not having skirmishers or pikemen, or not having elite skirmisher or pikemen makes them super susceptible to a lot of power spikes of other civs. Like, how do you counter Cavalier? How do you counter Arbalest? And I'm not saying counter like, oh, Hera, you can make like 60 heavy cav archers with Turks. They have 100 HP, dude. Can you even counter 100 Hera? I'm not saying they don't have army to counter these, but can you counter them in time? Like, going for the Turk late game, heavy cav archer Hussar, it's so strong. It's so strong. 100 HP heavy cav archers with Hussars is really strong. But the amount of times you'll get there with Turks is very unlikely in versus other top players. And so they have a lot of problems dealing with early Arbalest from civs like Britons, Ethiopians, even Chinese, Mayans, and they literally have nothing against that. They can't go Onager, they can't go elite skirmisher, and then their cav line is not that promising either. So Turks have a lot of problems, and I think they're not like that bad. Like, I feel like they have some strengths. Like, getting free Hussar is a good thing. Janissary is a decent unit. Bomber cannons straight out the gate and imp is a pretty good thing, but it has too many weaknesses in Arabia to put it anywhere higher than below average. Vietnamese is going to go straight to my good tier. Good economy, good units, pretty reasonable flexibility as well. You have bloodlines available and husbandry, and you have the battle elephant, so you can mix some of that in if you really want. But you have like fully upgraded light cav, missing blast furnace in late game, and then you have a really good archer line and imperial skirmishers, which could come up a lot against a lot of the archer civs. And you have bomber cannon, Rathan archers, really solid as well. Halberdier is available to you. I guess missing Blast Furnace is the biggest weakness of Vietnamese right now. But I think it should stay that way. I think it's a solid civ as it is. Good eco bonus too. Vikings straight to great tier. I mean, free handcart, free wheelbarrow. I think people are starting to realize how strong the civ is. I will say it's a little bit weaker in open maps. In the open maps, it could have some weaknesses, but it also has a good meta arm rush. It has a good drush. It has really good all-in castle play as well. You can easily go knights and crossbows in castle stage with free handcarts. Sure, you don't have bloodlines. I think you're missing husbandry as well. But their knight play is pretty decent with their good, because you have that good economy, like in the early castle age, honestly. So I think you can survive with Vikings in early castle age, and then once you get to like mid castle age, your handcart has kicked in so much, and your economy is like through the roof. You get to like early imp, fast arbalest, and that's how you can wrap up the game with Vikings. They also have a good late game with berserks, berserk arbalest, or berserk skirmisher, or arbalest siege ram. Something like that can be really solid. So that's going to be my tier list, guys. I'm sorry for any Portuguese fans or people out there. Your civ sucks. But other than that, it's been a pretty fun time for me to do this. Obviously, we have King of the Desert right around the corner. So Arabia is going to be the hot topic right now. So I hope you guys enjoy this tier list. Again, take it with a grain of salt. It's just my opinion, but feel free to leave your opinion down below in the comments and let me know where you guys disagree with me, or where you guys agree, or what you guys think is maybe I overvalued or undervalued. Let me know your thoughts. I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care and bye for now. Peace. Bye.